Is going on, you beautiful and blessed boys and girls? Thanks for tuning in to Tyromper's No Limits, episode number 18. We got the man, the myth, the legend. We got Mr. Joe Horton in the house today. This is a man that is the host of the Guild of Dads podcast, a man that's a proud husband, father, and patriarch, a man that has run a marathon alone in the dark. I can't wait to get into this later. A man that's helping other men master the art of dad improvement by transforming their lives. And this is a man that I consider a friend and a brother. Thanks for joining us today, Mr. Joe Horton. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing very well. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And, we've linked up on Spaces a couple of times over on Twitter, and it's been a real blast. And I'm meeting a lot of amazing new people on Twitter and making a lot of great connections. And certainly when we kind of interact, there's generally kind of fireworks and some stuff going on. So I'm excited about today and about what you're going to ask me and what I'm going to be able to drop in terms of pearls of wisdom for you guys.
I appreciate that, man. You're a guy that I've taken some notes on some of the things you've put down. I learn a lot from, and you mentioned the Twitter. I love our community and how we all kind of grow together. Can you just give anybody who's listening maybe a quick intro on yourself, kind of your backstory, where you come from and what you're about?
Yeah. So basically my kind of backstory, and this is where kind of this chapter of my life kind of started. So my dad passed away in 2015, and 2015 was like a horrendous year for me, really. My old man passed away very suddenly of a stroke in February, and then we had a severe business debt that was going to threaten to kind of sink our second generation family business. It was one of those years that you just don't want to get up in the morning. It was just like horrific. And so obviously after my old man passed away, I was grieving and I was going through the whole bereavement thing. And at that time, after that time, I'd kind of done a little bit of self-development. I've done a little bit of meditation, but I kind of, probably like a lot of other guys, I kind of had a dabble here and a dabble there. But I think after my dad died, it brought into sharp focus, what did my life mean? What was I going to leave with this world? What was I going to do? And so I kind of sort of not stumbled around for a couple of years, because objectively life was going well. I run a second generation family business with my brother. So, we have a good lifestyle and stuff, but something was kind of missing. And what happened to me was that one day I was listening to a podcast, of all things, bearing in mind I'm a podcast host now. And it was a guy called Jordan Harbinger, and he was interviewing a guy called Ryan Mickler, who runs Order of Man. Yeah. So, and Ryan was talking about, the Iron Council and stuff. And I thought, yeah, that sounds good. It was a brotherhood. There was like a structure, there was a plan. And so I joined up to that. And I thought, yeah, I'll only be on there for a month or something like that. But I ended up on there 18 months, and what I discovered on there was the value of brotherhood, the value of doing stuff that's outside of your comfort zone and doing things that make you uncomfortable, people holding you really strictly to account and holding your feet to the fire and stuff, which I kind of never really experienced in my life before. But that kind of gave me quite a good kind of grounding over that sort of 18 months period. And the long and short of it was life began to change. My relationships began to change with my wife and my kids. My health and fitness began to change. My kind of outlook on life began to change. And it really kind of ignited a kind of spark inside of me. So what I did was the thing that kind of I struggled with was, what was going to be my purpose? What was going to be the thing that gave me meaning in life and stuff? And it just so happened, 2019, I think it was, I was on holiday and I picked up a copy of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And I finished reading this book. I kind of chewed it out when I was on holiday, and I sat there on this like a balcony in this hotel overlooking the Mediterranean Sea and put this book down. And I was kind of like, my life is becoming more meaningful, but why is that? What is it that's making life more meaningful? And then I realized that my life had changed because I'd kind of developed a kind of vision in a number of different areas of my life. I'd taken action on that on that vision in the different areas of my life. And that was beginning to make life meaningful. So the kind of tagline for Guild of that was when I sort of conceived, actually, I want to help other guys who may have gone through a similar thing to me and that may be experiencing the similar things to me, and actually begin to help other guys through what I've learned and what I know through my own experience. And that's kind of how the tagline for Guild of Dads is vision, action, and meaning. But I've tweaked it recently because I could see something in there which I call the meaning equation, which is vision plus action equals meaning. And the reason for that is that, like, a lot of people get into kind of being like what I would term goal junkies, and you get that hedonic adaptation where you hit a goal and then you kind of move on to the next goal and you're kind of never really kind of satisfied. So, but vision really kind of appealed to me in quite a big way, because I think that with guys, I think vision is nice because it gives you like a trajectory and a direction in which to move without actually sort of it having to be sort of too perfect, if that makes any sense. You can align your habits and rituals and stuff with it. And I think that when you have a vision and when you take action on that vision, the meaning comes from the journey, what you learn and what you experience actually going on that kind of journey. And so that's kind of how Guild of Dads was kind of born. I started the podcast beginning of 2020. So the podcast has been going 2 years now. We've interviewed some of the brightest minds on the planet. So I've interviewed Steve Pressfield, I've interviewed Zuby, I've interviewed guys like Chris Ducker, ex-military guys, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, New York Times bestselling authors. So I've interviewed about 70 different guests, and the kind of thinking behind the podcast is to really get guys who are listening to it. It's not really a traditional kind of dad podcast in the sense of like nappies and prams and pushchairs. It's dad improvement. So it's kind of expanding what men think is possible for them in a number of different areas of their life, and that's kind of really where it is. The Facebook group has swelled to like a couple of thousand guys now. Twitter's growing. I coach guys now as well, and it's just really kind of I still have my day job, but this is the thing that really kind of excites me. And what excites me more than anything else is when I get messages or emails or DMs or whatever from guys, and they say those words, "You've changed my life." And that's what kind of lights me up inside like a Christmas tree,
That's so awesome, man. There's so much to unpack there, and that's incredible. Would you say that, before your dad passed, you were sort of, living a great life, like you said, but I think a lot of people could probably resonate with that, where things are going well, business is good, marriage is good, kids are good, life's good, we live in a good home, right? But unless you have sort of what I hear you alluding to is kind of a mission bigger than yourself, right? Where you start to see in terms of, and that book, Viktor Frankl book, is amazing. I love that, Man's Search for Meaning. Probably read that 2 or 3 times now, man. Great book. But you do start to think about, you reverse engineer your life from the end to the beginning, right? And you start to think about, when I'm on my deathbed, what do I want to be remembered for? And so for you, it sounds like impacting other people and having that ripple effect of, you can change the world in that way. Can you talk a little bit about that and that light bulb that kind of came on around that?
Yeah, I mean, I realized what I kind of realized was that, like for a lot of men, I think the trap they fall into is thinking that to have a meaningful life means having things, having cars, having houses, having really nice holidays and stuff. But I'm realizing as I go on my journey, and as I speak to more guys, that actually those things become a kind of means to an end. And in actual fact, a lot of guys have got all this stuff, but there's something missing. It's just something missing, and it just like, and they're comfortable. They're not really stretching themselves. And it's a job they've always done, and I think that, and I think they're kind of stuck. They're stuck in this kind of, I won't say it's like a loop of mediocrity, but they're kind of frightened of breaking out of what they're doing and doing something different, because it's the prospect of that is is hard for them to face. So I'm trying to remember what your original question was.
Yeah. Even off of that, kind of to play off that, but I think society kind of teaches us that to chase shiny new things, that's happiness, right? If the guy driving the Ferrari's got to be happier than the guy driving the Camry, right? That's what every commercial tells you when you grow up. And then I think a lot of men that I talk to and you talk to now, we discover that's kind of a lie in most sense, that those things don't really make you happy. And so can you kind of talk about then, what is happiness for you, and how are you able to kind of share that with other men to help kind of unprogram and unlearn that for them?
Yeah, this is interesting actually, because I've remembered your original question about impact. I think what resonates with me about dads is that, like, when a dad's firing on all cylinders, everyone glows in that light. So basically, if dad feels good about himself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, he is going to have a better relationship with his wife. He's going to have a better relationship with his kids. He's probably going to have a better relationship with his friends, family, community. So there's a kind of wide-ranging impact there. And also, if it has a beneficial impact on your children, it means that mums and dads stay together for a start. So you've got less in the way of divorces and family breakups and stuff. So there's a kind of wide-ranging kind of ripple effect there in terms of the legacy effect of what you're doing. It's not just about the guys you're helping, it's about their kids, it's about their wives and stuff. So I think that's the kind of the legacy impact of it. But I think in terms of, guys kind of feeling lost and feeling that they need something more in their lives, I think that we have this kind of meaning crisis, for want of a better word, and I know Frankl talks about this, and a number of other different authors talk about this, where people have like meaning is a really kind of abstract thing. It's not like an emotion. It's like a feeling. It's like a sense. I describe it as like an sort of aching sort of below your rib cage where your solar plexus is. And because I think people can't articulate what that feeling is, I think it becomes very difficult for people to, and particularly guys, to know what to do about it. So inevitably what it ends up as is anxiety, low-level depression, drinking, drugs, gambling, porn, anything external that can take away that internal feeling of something being missing. And I think that the hard thing is for a lot of guys is that trying to move themselves away from that and the influences around them that, for middle-aged men, it's generally kind of like, oh, okay, you're feeling a bit bad, let's go and have a beer, or let's go. So there's always like an external method being used to try and anesthetize what they're feeling. But the problem is what they're feeling can only be cured or dealt with by kind of going on like a soul journey. And I think you mentioned about happiness. And I think that, like, happiness is a weird one in the sense that, like, happiness, joy, there's lots of kind of different emotions. Sometimes people are chasing kind of happiness or what they think will make them happy, and they're trying to chase happiness but avoid pain all the time. And I think we have this polarity with guys where they're avoiding pain, chasing happiness, avoiding pain, chasing happiness. And I said to someone today that living a meaningful life doesn't mean living an easy life. In fact, as you well know, when you probably started to make changes in your life, actually you experience a massive amount of discomfort, a massive amount of doubt, a massive amount of self-defeating thoughts. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you feel like this morning I feel like a worthless piece of shit. But you don't experience that when you're in like a safe comfort zone, because it's just comfortable. But you feel that, but it's that low level kind of aching of there's something more than this. So it's that old there's a parable, I think it's a choice. There's two wolves and you've got the choice of which wolf you want to feed. And I think this is the kind of challenge that a lot of guys have got. You either feed the wolf of comfort zone, which is staying where you are, not going anywhere. Life's good, but it's not bad. Life's bad, but it's not good. Or you go for the one which is kind of higher risk, but all of a sudden it kind of lights you up inside. And that's a distinction I think that sometimes guys miss, but they need to kind of look at a little bit closer.
I definitely agree. And I resonate everything you said, because I do think, okay, a lot of times too, a lot of men, we grow up, a lot of us play sports, or we have these team activities, right? Maybe when we're in high school, university, college, whatever. Then we get the girl, we get the house, we get the kids, and everything society tells you. We got nice cars, we take vacations, all these things, but there is that, I call it a hole in your soul, just something missing, and again, if you're working a job that you're really passionate about, maybe it covers it up. Or like you alluded to, a lot of guys just, they drown out and they're going to watch every football and every NBA game, and that, they're going to bleed it out with that, or booze or drugs, porn, whatever that might be. Right. But I do think all of us, we don't feel alive. And then what you alluded to, just, it hit home so much of how, until we really challenge and push ourselves, we can't be the best us around people that rely on us. Right. And I saw that in my own life, where I just complained a lot. I was pretty miserable, and I complained, and that was the attitude of my family for a few years. Right. And until I started to turn that around and start getting up at 5 a.m. like a psychopath, and go out in the cold and run sprints and do some of these hard things, right? Start to create a business, like, where people are telling you you're stupid, you have a great job, why would you do that? But and there is a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, a lot of all that anxiety. But when you keep pushing past those levels, that's where all the growth happens. And so for you to be able to kind of articulate that to men and say, you're living a comfortable life, and that's safe, and that's probably what your brain's designed to keep you to do, is keep you safe, right? But there's more to life, and let's go chase that thing. And then, you probably see the light bulb turn on a lot of these men, and that's when they really get on fire, and then they're passionate, and their marriage changes, their relationship with their kids change, relationship with everybody changes, right?
And I think, and also I think as well, there is like and you've experienced this on Twitter, people shoot the messenger. Like, I've got guys that I've worked with, and they didn't want us they didn't want to hear what I had to say to begin with. They got angry with me for saying it to them. Yeah. And I wasn't saying it to them because I wanted to be like a jerk, and I wasn't saying it because I wanted to be horrible to them. But no one had ever said this to them. And I won't name names, but there's a guy that I work with, and he was having some relationship issues, and he really pushed back at the beginning. And it was like, it's hopeless, no one's ever going to help me and whatever. And then he reached out to me, when his relationship was, literally they were about to get divorced. And he said, look, I've run out of options. What should I do? And I was like, right, this is what I would suggest you do. I would suggest you read this book and this book. And I suggest you start applying this stuff very, very quickly. And his relationship transformed now. And he messaged me today, funny enough. And he said that, he's off for a weekend away with his wife. Things have never been better. Intimacy's back on track. Everything's done a 360-degree about turn. And sometimes it's about guys being able to listen to the messenger and not shoot listen to the message and not shoot the messenger. And some of the guys I work with, initially they will say, there'll be pushback, because they'll be like, no, their brain will be whirring away, like thinking of every rational excuse why I'm wrong and they're right. And this is not from an egocentric, arrogant point of view, but because I'm at a little bit far removed from the situation, I can say, look, I can see what's going amiss here. This is what I think you need to look at doing. And once they kind of start doing it, it's just seeing the change. And often it's very basic stuff, but like seeing the change of kind of like night and day, like it's just so rewarding seeing how things can change and how quickly they change as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people buy into that lie that it's, oh, these people must know a secret that I don't know, or it's some big program or fancy transformational thing, when really it's just your daily routine and daily habits. And, a thing you alluded to right there, that, I just hopped off a call right before this podcast with Dan Go from Twitter, and I just had a couple of business questions and questions for him. And, I offered to pay him for his time. He's such a nice guy. He said, nah, man, just hop on a call with me. But just having him zoom out and kind of help me ask the right questions to myself, it was so enlightening. I took a couple pages of notes, and I went and talked to my wife right after. And it was just such to have that kind of aerial view, because we're stuck in the day to day. Right. And so to have you out there helping guys, I think that's an amazing thing to have that kind of that overview. They're in the midst of it, but you can kind of see that overview and help them get out of their own way a lot of times. I think that's the most critical piece. And then one other thing you mentioned, I want to bring on, because this is probably the number one thing I get in my DMs all the time. I don't know if you get this, but I've been married 10 years and me and my wife haven't been intimate for 4 of them or 6 of them, or I've been married 18 years. We haven't been intimate in a decade. What do I do? I don't know if you get that question a lot. I get this question a lot. Is that something you help guys with then, kind of
Yeah.
reignite that flame, or is that part of what you do? Can you speak on that?
Yeah, it's definitely something that comes up, and hey, I'm not going to diss our parents' generation, okay, but I think that the baby boomer generation, rightly or wrongly, have spawned a generation of nice guys who are used to happy wife, happy life. They're used to doing anything for a quiet life.
Freaking hate that.
And this is really controversial. It's not. Is it controversial? No, it's not controversial. And unfortunately, I loosely say our generation, but the generations following have got into this habit of getting married or getting in long-term relationships and not doing basic things. And I know, because I've learned the hard way, that you have to have, for instance, a needs, roles, and boundaries discussion at the outset of your relationship and throughout it. And this is not like rocket science. It's just like working out what your needs are, working out what your wife's needs are, working out what the boundaries are around, when you're going to go to the gym, when she's going to have time out with her girlfriends, how you're going to speak to each other within the relationship, what your kind of red line behaviors are, and what your kind of, I would say, green line behaviors and orange, and what are the things that you have to have in your relationship and stuff. So that is kind of one S. So you have kind of nice guy behavior, which I would say is the biggest problem I see. Not having needs, roles, and boundaries discussions. And the third thing as well, and I think this comes from kind of modern parenting. We have, I think, what I call parental martyrdom. So it's one or both parents believing that the family unit will disintegrate without them. And sometimes it can be mum who doesn't want to take time off duty and she won't let go of the reins and let dad take over. Sometimes it will be both parents that were like, no, we can't leave the kids with a babysitter and go out for a date night because the whole world is going to end. But the problem is with that is that relationships stagnate after a while, because you're no longer husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend. You're just kind of flatmates. Roommates. And so these are the kind of sort of typical problems that I see. And a lot of it comes through guys are fearful to actually state their needs because they're worried about their wives' reaction to it, and whether or not they're going to kick off, and and there's a societal cost attached to family breakup. And so at the back of men's minds, it's, well, if I upset my wife and she leaves me, then I won't get to see my kids. So there's a whole load of stuff, like fears, that come along with this as well. And quite often when you kind of get to work with guys in terms of overcoming some of these kind of rational fears and actually, stating their needs clearly to their wives and stating what behavior that they will tolerate and what they won't tolerate, all of a sudden their wife's respect for them comes back. Their attraction comes back. They're not spending all their time tiptoeing around their wife and treading on eggshells. And it's so counterintuitive. Guys like, I can't believe this is working. And you're like, yeah. And not only does it make them more attractive towards their wives, because they're getting in shape and they're setting boundaries and they're looking after their mental health and with stuff, but it makes them attractive towards everyone else. The idea is not to be attractive to everyone else, but it's a natural byproduct of getting your ducks in order. And I talked about this. I'm gonna digress here slightly. There's a lot of guys on Twitter at the minute, the frame guys, the fake frame guys, and I did a thread on this today, around authentic frame, actually being authentic, and rather than putting this fake mask on, actually just getting your life in order and your frame coming naturally as a byproduct of you getting your life in order. And again, this is all part and parcel of the same thing. People are going to be attracted to you and your energy and stuff when you get your life in order. And this is kind of what it's about. It's changing your relationship with yourself first, and then your relationship with other people. And again, I know you've been on this journey as well. So
That's why I'm just smiling this whole time. I'm living if I could have hired you about 5 years ago, I would save myself a lot of pain, Joe. Because I went through a divorce early in my 20s, and still friends with her to this day, and wish her the best. But it was just looking back, happy wife, happy life. If we had a fight or disagreement or an argument, what I did was I went out and bought her a present and then never talked about it again. And we would never have a hard talk. And then I saw in the first, year or two of my marriage with my current wife, it was the same way. I wouldn't have a hard talk. I had no boundaries. If my parents wanted to stop in anytime, that was fine because I couldn't tell them no. I wasn't going to say no to any of my friends if they want to go out for drinks, even if it meant putting my wife out. I just had no boundaries, no self-respect. And then one night I spent about 3.5, 4 hours in tears, and I wrote down exactly who I'm going to become and why I'm going to become that guy, and little by little, I just saw this shift in my wife. And I'll never forget the day where she pulled me aside and said, I'm so attracted to you. I'm so in love with you now. And I didn't even think we would get to this point, but it took me, she loved me the whole time. Right. But it took me really respecting myself and setting boundaries myself for her to kind of have that same level of respect for me, I think, too. And so getting out of your own way, that is probably a good way to put it, is how you help a lot of guys get out of their own way. Right. And kind of,
yeah, I gave you the long answer to that.
Yeah, like the happy wife, happy life thing, though. Can you allude to that a little bit more? Because I think a lot of guys listen to that. That's a common thing. Guys will say that to me, even guys that potentially want me to coach them. Well, happy wife, happy life. I'm just trying to keep the peace. And I always got to tell them, brother, we got to unlearn that, because I kept the peace for a long time and it created a war within myself and then a war within our home. And can you kind of allude to that point a little more and share some wisdom around that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a short story. Actually, on our wedding day, the registrar said, he said, "You're the nicest turned out couple that I've seen all year." And I was like, yeah, you probably say that to everyone. And I just quipped, I was in my early 20s, and I just kind of said, it's nothing to do with me. My wife makes all the decisions. I just do as I'm told, because that was what we were told. That was what we were told as guys. And so, and he leaned into me and he whispered into my ear and he said, "Take it from me, son. That's the key to a long and happy marriage." Now, since then, I've kind of got wise to the fact that that's not ideal relationship advice for like an early 20-year-old. But my point is I think a lot of guys were told this. And I think a lot of guys were told that if they were to give their wife all they want and need from a kind of material point of view, from a providing point of view, having a good job, roof over their head, again, all these material things that we were talking about before, that is it for being a husband. But in actual fact, for relationships, there's a lot more to relationships than that. And you need to develop a deep connection. You need to spend time together. You need to have respect for each other. You need to be able to communicate needs. You need to be able to understand how women and men interact differently. Like, a good example of this is most guys put their Mr. Fix-It hat on when their wives are telling them something. And actual fact, a lot of the time, your wife is not going to want you to fix anything. She just wants you to listen, so she can vent and she can talk to you about it and stuff. And conversely, guys are a lot better at monotasking, whereas women can multitask a lot more. So like, my wife will come in to here and she will, I'll be in the middle of, like, in the zone doing something, and she'll start asking me about, I don't know, what we're doing at the weekend or whatever. And I'm like, sweet, I'm just in the middle of something right now here, sort of thing. So I have to politely kind of, so in the same way as she doesn't want me to fix all her problems when she's talking to me about stuff, I have to kind of explain to her that when I'm kind of monotasking on something, that her coming in and talking to me about what we're doing at the weekend is just like, yeah, that's just gonna, if my monotasking is like a bubble, that's just sticking a pin in the bubble and popping it while I'm in the middle of something, sort of. So it's just understanding of these kind of, and we're not taught any of this stuff. It's just like, right, go and get married, live happily ever after. It'll be okay. Just work at it.
The Disney movie, right?
That's just the shittest advice you've ever got in your life, and you're just like, that doesn't help. And I think what's really sad about guys when they get into relationship issues is, like, guys don't pull the ripcord on their parachute until they're about to hit the floor generally. And And what's sad is that so many things could be avoided. I'm not saying that we should have a manual when you walk down the aisle, but I just think in this day and age we could just be doing a lot more. And I think a lot of the advice out there is really bad advice as well. Like, yeah, buy her a bunch of flowers. Well, I've already bought her a bunch of flowers. I wouldn't be sitting here in a therapist's office if buying her a bunch of flowers would have bloody well worked, And like some of this, like take her out for dinner. It's gone past the point of taking her out for dinner. That's not going to work,
Right.
Yeah, it's just
That's
just
funny.
very interesting.
The big thing that you mentioned there, I once wrote when I was trying to unlearn this stuff, the fixing thing. Have you ever seen the video? It's a YouTube video called Nail in the Head.
I've not seen it.
It's brilliant. I'll link it below, and I'm going to link all Joe's podcast and all of his Twitter and stuff below too. But I'll link this video. It's only like a minute, but it's basically this girl approaches her husband and says, "I just got this terrible headache," and she has this big nail sticking out her head, and the husband's like, "Oh, let me pull it out," and she's like, "No, like, I just want to talk about how my head hurts, and like I'm frustrated because my sweaters get snagged," and like he's like, "Oh, it must be really hard. I love you," and she's like, "Thank you," and she's like, "That's all I wanted," and that was like a big light bulb moment for me that like. When my wife would tell me about her day, I would just quickly fix, right? Like this is like if me and you were talking and you said, "Hey, Ty, I really want my triceps to get bigger." I would say, "Hey, do X, Y, and Z exercise." And if I said, "Hey, Joe, I really want to get better at running. What do I do?" You'd say, "Hey, here's a program I'm going to send you, fixed, done." But if we listen to our wives talk, it would be, "Oh, my 3 1-year-olds are so tough right now. One of them's getting sick with this, another with the," and then all the moms would sit around and say, "That is hard," and no problems would be solved, but they would validate one another, say, "It is hard. You're doing a great job." That's how women want us to communicate. I wrote 1,000 times or more in a notebook, "Do not fix, validate, and listen. Do not fix, validate, and listen." I just want to keep programming my brain that. And that was such a big turning point in our relationship where it wasn't like my wife would just say something to me and I would just fire back, "Do this, do that, do that," I'd listen to her needs. I would try and understand where she was coming from, give her the benefit of the doubt. She's not attacking me. I don't need to get defensive. It's not an attack on me. She's just sharing life, sharing the journey, right? That was a big light bulb moment for me, man. You'll have to watch the Nail in the Head video too.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it also has the way that men and women are different has practical applications in terms of self-development as well, because I think that men do well with coaching, they do well with brotherhoods, and they do well with that kind of structure. Because it's playing into our natural ability to fix and want to fix ourselves and fix situations. And I think that I interviewed a guy called John Barry, who's written a book, Perspectives in Male Psychology, and there's a big kind of conversation going on within the psychological community at the moment because the therapeutic methods for men are very different, or the effective therapeutic methods for men are very different to the effective therapeutic methods for women. So guys don't necessarily always want to talk about their problems. They often want to look at a forward-thinking orientated solution to those problems, which coaching or brotherhoods or self-development kind of really does play into, because it's guys being able to read books, podcasts, audio books and stuff, and actually deepen their knowledge of themselves. And one of the things that I talk about a lot with guys is to actually change your relationship with thought, feeling, and emotion, and become a lifelong student of the mind. Because I think there's a lot of pressure on guys to be more emotional at the moment, which I think sometimes can be disempowering. And I think many guys want to be empowered. And I think that equipping guys with the schools, with the tools and resources and stuff to do that, I think makes them feel better about themselves. It gives them more autonomy and ownership and stuff. And I think it's a lot better way of doing it. So yeah, that's just my side on that.
Absolutely. That's a really good point though, because, my wife and I went to therapy, and it's funny, full circle back what you mentioned. The therapist was like, "Well, what are you doing for?" And I was like, "Well, I work weekends. I bought her flowers. I did." And my wife's like, "I don't care about that stuff. I want you to listen. I want," so we had sort of those same conversations you were talking about. But what you just said there was really a light bulb moment for me that, we went to therapists and it worked to some degree, but I wanted more actionable things. And then hiring Zach Hommel off Twitter a couple of years ago probably took our relationship from, mediocre good to just what my wife calls now better than the honeymoon, and it was just being able to open up with another guy and get actionable things that I could do and actionable things I could work on myself first, and then that I could pour into her and the family. Right. And I could see, I never really thought of that until you just mentioned it, but that's like a light bulb moment for me. That's why guys need guys like you, guys like me that would coach and help them through that. And that's a lot more valuable than just sitting in a therapy session and talking about the past. You know, I tell guys all the time, at some point, you got to decide, I'm going forward. You can look back for a short period of time, learn from that. But at some point, your life has to go forward. You'll be miserable if you just always think about how she hurt you in the past, what happened in the past. At some point, you got to go forward, right?
Yeah, I think an awareness of your past and how it plays into things is good. But I think ultimately, I always say that guys have got a choice as to whether or not to be a victim of their own lives. There's a really good book by Edith Eger called The Choice, and she survived Nazi Germany, the Holocaust, and there's some really poignant passages in that book, and it really does play into the kind of victim mentality we see nowadays, that in actual fact we all have a choice as to whether to become a victim of our own lives. And I think that certainly it's useful to be aware of how we've got to where we are, particularly in terms of kind of how we show up in relationships, and particularly if we've got attachment issues and that kind of stuff. It's useful to be aware of it, but I think that you still have to do the work in order to take you forward. And it's the same with like relationship dynamics. Guys often are getting really hung up on a lot of the kind of red pill and game stuff and whatever and that. And again, it's good to be aware of it, how it plays out and stuff, but just don't get too obsessed by it, because the problem is otherwise you're running your life like it's like a level of Mario Kart or something, where you're trying to get, X amount of kind of like, bonus points to get to the next level and stuff. And just, life's not like that, and I think a lot of guys are looking at it thinking, yeah, this is like a level of like a computer game that I've got to kind of level up, and I've got a game and hack my way to the next bit and whatever. It's like, no, it's not. You don't do that in relationships, because if you do, you just seem like this kind of robot automaton, and your wife's going to pick up on that,
Yeah, she's going to want you authentic above all else, just like other people. I mean, even one thing you said too, and then, when you're your best self and you're improving, whether that be physically, mentally, spiritually, which you should try and be doing all the time, that's when I started getting promoted at work, man. I mean, I was working less hours, but I had more defined boundaries, but I started getting promoted a lot. I think just people felt the energy and the positivity and all those things around you. And, your wife and the people that are around you in your community are going to see that too. So can you kind of tell us about your self-improvement journey? I mean, you're obviously a very fit guy. Were you always pretty fit? And,
so I've not always been, I've not always been fit. I mean, I grew up, I was running, and I did a lot of running and cycling at school. I used to race as a schoolboy and junior. In fact, I raced as a schoolboy and junior against Bradley Wiggins, who was a former Tour de France winner. And then I kind of got out of that in my sort of early 20s sort of thing. So
did you beat him when you raced his childhood?
Once in a race, and I think, but he actually climbed off. I think he was having a really bad day, sort of thing. But generally, it was like sitting behind a motorbike when he attacked. So it was, but he was a kind of class. He was a kind of class act. But yeah, so I did a lot of cycling and running when I was in my kind of late teens, early 20s. Then I kind of got out of it and kind of focused on work, and I was into sales and that kind of stuff. And then I've dabbled in and out of sort of sports and fitness. And then the last few years, I've kind of got back into it. Started off with, usual thing, bodyweight exercises. Then I got kind of back into running. So I went from literally running like 3 miles to begin with. And this is the bit you're waiting for. This is a coaching bit. So I did 3 miles to begin with, and then or 5K. Then I kind of gradually went up through the mileage 4, 5, 6, and then I went up to, I did a 10-mile race. Then I did a half marathon. And then I'm like, right, okay, well, I'm up to half marathon. I might as well just do a marathon. And so I signed up for a marathon, and yeah.
Okay, so you sign up for a marathon, because this is exactly where I'm at in my life now. I haven't run more than a mile in about 4.5 years, and I just decided a few days ago that I'm going to run a marathon in 12 months. And so I talked to my dad, who's run a few, and I'm starting to get a little training plan and start to run again. But can you take me through your journey? And then I know you have a fun story about you
Yeah.
actually running this marathon. So maybe you can share that. That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd signed up for this marathon, and this was, the marathon was due, I think it was due to be in April or May 2020. And this was when the whole world kind of shut down and started to lock down in that spring 2020, or certainly in the UK at least. So I'm down to run this marathon, and they're talking about postponing it till the autumn. And I'd done all my training all the way through the winter, in the kind of cold, dark winter nights and mornings, early mornings, and very long runs with my earphones in and stuff. And so this marathon was cancelled, and the whole world was kind of locked down. And I'm going to make an admission of breaking the law here, because when lockdown came in, you could only do like an hour. I think you were sanctioned an hour exercise. I think in about the second week of lockdown, I said to my wife, I said, look, I want to run this marathon. I've trained for this marathon. I don't want to wait till like the autumn or fall, as you guys call it. So I was like, right, this Saturday I'm going to do it. She was like, what do you mean you're going to do it? I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go and run this marathon, and on Saturday. She was like, well, where are you going to go? I was like, well, I'm going to go to the next town, and I'm going to work out a sort of rough route and whatever and stuff. So on this Saturday night, I kind of set off, and I had like a hydration pack and some like cereal bars, some drinks, and put my earphones in, and like had like a soundtrack of kind of, it was a mixture of kind of reggae, soulful house. I think there's some Dire Straits and stuff like that in there as well. So like proper old school stuff. And so I set off in the dark, and I saw a couple of stoneheads on my way out of town. I didn't see anyone for hours and hours on end. And so
you just run by yourself with your headphones in during peak lockdown. Everybody's looking out their window. Who's this crazy guy running for 5 straight hours?
Yeah, it was like a Forrest Gump moment. It was like I was running, as they say. So I got back into town at like and it was like a ghost town. It was like there was no one about at all. And then I got back, I did a few sort of loops of town, and by that point my hip flexors were like concrete, and it was just painful. I got back to the cul-de-sac where my house was, and I'd not quite done 26.2 miles. I think I had about half a mile to go, and I was like, I don't want to do another loop. So I just kept running up and down my cul-de-sac at like 11 o'clock at night. And then all of a sudden my Garmin just like burst into life. It just all lights up when you hit 26.2 miles.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, great. And I thought, yeah, my wife's going to be standing there welcoming me home, because I kind of text her a few times towards the end to say, I'm 5 minutes away. This was like half hour. I'm another 5 minutes away. Because mine just was going so slow by the end. And so I thought, yeah, there's going to be a welcoming party when I get home. I open the front door. It's just like dark, no one about. Walk upstairs. My wife's watching Netflix in bed. And it was like the biggest anticlimax.
Just did it for you, no one else. That's important to set goals and do them just for you, though, right?
Yeah. I think I had a bread roll and an apple, had a shower, and just got straight into bed, and that was it. Bang. That was my marathon.
Are you going to do another one at some point?
No, well, the thing is I thought the next step up from that is doing ultras. And I'm not going to lie, when you're doing marathons, your knees and your joints do creak. And I think my focus, it was something that I wanted to do, but I think going into the kind of second half of my life, I'm going to prefer to do like easy cardio, maybe some bike, and maybe more focus on strength sort of thing. So, because I do enjoy running, but I just think for your joints and your mobility, I just don't think it's a good long-term prospect for the second part of life,
Yeah, that's what I think. I want to be 85, 90, man, still playing with my great grandkids. That's my number one goal of fitness, right? It's not to like win races or things like that. It's longevity. So I'm with you, man. Well, shifting gears, I feel like I could chat with you for forever, but I know we're on a limited time here. But one other thing I kind of wanted to hit was just overall your best relationship tips and your best relationship advice for maybe men or kind of things that you and your wife do. I know you mentioned, the date nights and things like that. But you're a busy guy. I hear this a lot. People are busy, work their job. You got a side hustle, you got kids. So how do you kind of prioritize that and still make sure that your wife's getting your best self?
So there's a few sort of practical things. So on a typical day, it's all kind of quite busy in the morning where we're trying to get the kids to school and stuff and that. So that's all a bit crazy. But one of the things I kind of generally try and do is I make sure that we make sure that we have dinner together as a family every night. We have dinner together as a family. I put my phone away when I get in for the first couple of hours that I'm in, so that so my family have my full attention in the evening. I don't work every evening, so I sort of, in terms of, I'm doing Guild of Dads as on top of my day job, so I allocate a certain amount of evenings a week for that. But then like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's those are evenings with my wife and kids and stuff. But I also, in the week, I make sure that I spend one-to-one time with my kids. Like my oldest, I'm going through the Marvel films with my oldest at the moment. Nice. Sunday is family day, so we always make sure that we spend time together on a Sunday. That's kind of gospel. That's ruled out as family day sort of thing. But we do date nights, and also one of the things that I advocate, I have something which I call the family dynamic rebalancer, and it's like a graphic, and I say to guys to fit as many of the things they can on this graphic into a typical month. So within that is time by yourself. So you go and have time by yourself doing gym or hobbies or whatever. Your wife having time by herself. You spending time together as a couple. So you have time together. You spending time with buddies, her spending time with girlfriends, you spending one-on-one time with the kids, and also time as a family as well. And what I say to guys is to get as many of those things in over a typical month as possible. And that means it kind of covers all the bases. So you're developing a deep connection with your wife, with your kids individually. She's getting time out of the family unit to get her needs met, either individually or with girlfriends or whatever and stuff and that. And it just kind of the reason I call it the family dynamic rebalancer is it does just that. It rebalances everything, particularly if couples have got into this parental martyrdom thing that I spoke about earlier on in our conversation, and everything's revolving around the kids, or mum's not getting any time out, or dad's not getting time out. So it just rebalances things a little bit. And I can share this. I don't know how I do it, but I guess I can share it with you so you can put it underneath, or I'm happy to share it on Twitter. But it's just a really simple thing to kind of work around. But in terms of kind of one-to-one relationships, that needs roles and boundaries discussion. You've got to have that at the outset and throughout your relationship. You've also got to be not scared of having those difficult conversations and making sure your needs are met. But also, the other thing that I was going to say was, a lot of people lose themselves within relationships and marriage. And what I mean by that is, marriage is defined as a union between two people. It's not a merging of two people into one. It's a union of two people. So you still have your autonomy, you still have your individuality. But what the mistake I see a lot of couples make is, and this is where the soulmates term comes into play, they merge into this one heaving mass. And the problem is as the decades go by, this one heaving mass, all of a sudden they're like, he's forgotten who he is, she's forgotten who she is. So remember, like, marriage is like almost like a set of railway tracks that you're two going along in parallel together. And once you kind of merge, then you kind of lose yourself a little bit. So that's a tip as well. Try and keep your autonomy. Obviously you still got to respect each other and work out who's doing what and when they're doing it and stuff. But I think you still need to have you still have to have that individuality. And I think that's what makes makes relationships fun, because you've got that spark and electricity and tension and stuff, which a lot of guys are like, oh, that's freaking me out that we have this tension. And, I wish she was more like a guy. And she's like, I wish she was more like a girl sort of thing. But that's when you get comfortable with that tension, that I think David Dada calls it the dance of the masculine and feminine. Get used to that, because that's where the fun happens.
That's awesome, man. That's really great advice. There's so many things you say that I wish I knew you 5 or 6 years ago, man. I literally would have saved so much heartache, because that merging together, I thought that's what we were supposed to do, and I totally lost myself, man. I can think back to, I finally had a conversation with my wife at one point I don't want to watch TV at night. That's not how I unwind. It actually drives me insane. But I would just spend every night cuddling on the couch with my wife 7 days a week watching God knows what, some TV show that I don't care about. And I'm just sitting there stressed out because it's like, I'd rather be working on stuff that I like or I'm passionate about, so but that's how she unwinds. Right. And same way for me, it's, I wanted her to come play golf and tennis and do all these things. She doesn't like those things. So I go do those things with buddies, and that's the guy time. And then she gets to go do the things that she wants with her girlfriends, or right now she's out for a walk with a girlfriend, and it's just like finding that balance and filling those different buckets is so crucial, man. And when I hear you talk about that, I think that's something that all guys need to pause that are listening to this too, and really heed your wisdom there on that and start to really intentionally think, am I losing myself in any way? And how can I get myself back? Because she won't respect, my wife didn't respect me when I was kind of just a pushover. And well, I guess I'll watch freaking Golden Girls on the couch with you 2 episodes, even though I freaking hate this, like I needed to be doing my stuff. She needs to see me on fire, passionate, going for my stuff too,
Yeah.
That's a big.
And I think as well, I think guys, I reach a stage, and I can really relate to what you say about TV. I reached a stage where I was like, I don't mind watching TV for a few nights a week, but I'm not going to sit here and watch it 7 nights a week, sort of thing. But that caused some tension because at one stage I was getting frustrated that that's kind of, to me, that's all she wanted to do. And again, a big turning point was actually just accepting, look, she unwinds watching TV. That's her. Okay. That's her personality. I'm not going to get frustrated about that. I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to go off in a hump and, whine about it like a bitch boy. There's no point in doing that. And I think as you get older, I think your relationship wisdom comes from the fact that you accept your partner for who they are rather than who you want them to be. Mm-hmm. And I think, Jung talks about this in the shadow, in terms of shadow work, that you're projecting onto your partner. You're projecting what you want them to be rather than actually who they are. And I think that when you actually back off on that, completely back off on it, it gives so much breathing space to your partner to just chill and be comfortable in themselves without having to justify why they're watching TV or why they're doing something else or whatever that you don't necessarily have any interest in. And and I think that's just a kind of, and again, that's another advanced sort of relationship tack that you have to kind of realize that is necessary for you to both be your best selves and for you to encourage her to be the best mother and wife and woman that she can be, and that she'll reciprocate that 100 times over to you back as well.
100%. Yeah. And you're right. I think it oftentimes, when I was really getting into self-improvement, I'm like an all or nothing guy. I work on this a lot. I need more balance in my life, but I haven't watched TV in like 27 months, and so I don't watch it. It's a waste of time for me. That's where I'm at in this season. Doesn't mean in a different season I won't be at a different spot, but I would initially get frustrated with my wife. And now that I work from home a little bit, especially, I see from the second my wife wakes up, she does 1,000 things for our family, for me, almost nothing for herself. And so when we really communicated and I asked her, about the TV, and she just said, sometimes I just need 40 minutes, an hour with no one needing anything and to zone out and watch this dumb Kardashian show that I don't have to think about. And then I can go back to being like with it and on it, And so like you said, just to be able to accept that and say, I get that. And the same thing, she accepts me that, once every few weeks, man, I love nothing more than being a dad. It's my favorite thing in the world. I need to get away from my kids one day a month. I tell her that's what I need to. I just need to go see my buddy Joey. I need to walk up and down the strip. I need to play poker. I need to work out with them. I need to go play tennis or golf and just have one day a month away. And that's been really helpful for us to kind of clearly define our needs, as you spoke of. I think that's a lot of wisdom. And I think a lot of guys could need to have that talk with their wife.
Yeah, definitely. Hang on a minute. If you've not watched TV in 27 months, does that mean you've not watched any of Cobra Kai?
No, I watched the first season, but that was before 27 months. So I haven't. I want to watch the rest of it, but I just haven't. I haven't gotten back to it, man. We don't have like cable. We don't have HBO. We don't have Netflix. We don't have any of that stuff. So at some point I'll get back to it. I've heard that's an amazing show, but I'll get back to it.
I'll know when you're watching it because every single word in your tweets is going to be badass.
I'll understand that when I watch it. I actually have a Cobra Kai shirt too. My sister got it for me because I did like the first season. It was pretty good. But yeah, I haven't watched anything then. Well, I think I've had you about an hour now, man. That's usually when I try and get things down. But I do want to end. I always ask 5 rapid fire questions. I'm just going to give you 5 quick questions. Give me the first thing that comes off the top of your head. All right, Joe?
I'm ready.
Number 1, what's the most important thing you would say you do every single day?
Have dinner with my family.
That's big, man. That you alluded to earlier. That's the time where you guys kind of come together and build as a unit. That's special, man. I like that. That's awesome. What's one thing about you that maybe few people would know about, or you have like a unique talent or skill that maybe not that many people know about?
I am a really bad karaoke singer and dad dancer. My kids will tell you that. I got into karaoke singing by just watching it on YouTube and like singing along over Christmas and stuff. And I do have a tendency of dad dancing around the kitchen. So I've not put that on Twitter yet, actually, but maybe I will have to. So that's going to be my challenge next, isn't it?
We should create a dad dance off day on Twitter, man. I'm the worst dancer in the world, and my wife was on dance team. She's amazing, but like, dude, I'll try and I'm the worst, man. But that would be fun if we did a Twitter dad dance day, man.
You're on.
I'm in with you, man. I'm in with you. I like that. If you're gonna plan a date with your wife, something kind of special, what does that typically look like for you guys?
Seaside, going to the sea.
Nice.
I love the beach. I absolutely love the beach, and I love being by the sea. I love the sound of the sea. I relax instantly when I'm by the sea. And so my perfect date with my wife would be, there's a restaurant in Brighton, which is right on the seafront. It overlooks the sea. And it's a seafood restaurant. So I quite like that as well. So that would be my perfect date. Definitely.
Nice.
Definitely.
That's awesome, man. I don't know if you mentioned this earlier or not. Best book? I don't know if it's going to be the Frankel book or most influential book over your life, would you say?
Yeah, it's got to be Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, definitely.
Yeah. Such a great book, man. Everybody needs to read that out there. If you can find happiness in that situation and joy, we can find it in our day-to-day lives too.
Yeah, definitely.
Last one I want to ask, and this is for any guy out there who might be listening, who just says, you know what, Joe, you don't understand, man. I work 6 days a week and me and my wife don't communicate, kids, all this stuff. I'm stuck and I don't know where to start. What would you tell a guy like that?
Start on yourself. Even if you don't do anything about relationships, start on yourself and start on 4 key areas, which is your mental health, your physical health, your relationships, and what you want to bring to the world, what you want to contribute, be it work or even if it's like a charitable work or something. But in those 4 key areas, make a plan for your life and start working those areas over, say, in 90-day blocks. That's generally what most guys do, 90-day blocks, and begin to make some changes in those areas. But start with yourself, not anyone else, not your wife, not your work, you're not your employer, not your kids. Start on yourself first.
Man, so much wisdom. I appreciate you coming on today, Joe. I could probably sit here and chat with you for about 24 hours, or maybe when I'm out for my marathon training, we can get some more chats in, man, because you just have so much wisdom. You bring so much to my life and everybody around you, man. I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on, brother.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate your energy. You know, your content and your tweets are always really positive, and they always I know when I click onto one of your tweets, I'm going to like, this is going to make me feel good. This is going to make me feel really, really good. So it's kind of like your tweets are like, I don't know what energy drinks you have over there. It's kind of like Lucozade, or it's like Gatorade for motivation. You're like the Las Vegas Les Brown.
I'll take that, man. I love Les Brown. And yeah, I just feel like Twitter can be such a dark place, man, that if I can be just a small light in that, man, I feel like that's a mission bigger than myself that I try and take to every day too, man. But I appreciate that, brother. Well, this has been Tyromper's No Limit podcast episode number. I think it's 18, might be 19. I'm not sure, guys. Check the title. But again, check out Joe Horton. Check him out on Twitter. I'm going to link everything he does below. Check out Guild of Dads. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go be kind to somebody today. Go work on yourself, as Joe says, and let's go be the best us so we can be the best for everybody else. Thanks, guys, and have the best day.